Okay, so I guess it's time for a 49ers video. I haven't made one of those in a while. But seriously, one of the reasons why I've been talking about the 49ers so much is the fact that they've made a lot of really interesting moves this offseason. And it doesn't hurt that I tend to get more views on those ones than any of my other videos. But one of their more interesting signings this offseason was picking up Tevin Coleman, who I really like a lot, and I think this is a very good move for San Francisco. And considering the fact that he's only going to be getting paid $4.25 million a year for the next 2 years, I mean, it's a pretty low-risk, high-reward signing for San Francisco. One of the things that I think makes Coleman such an effective player is the way that he doesn't just go north and south, but he can go east and west as well as any player in the league. He's so quick at getting over to his right and left, and I think that's what really makes him valuable in today's NFL. Like on this play, basically what Atlanta is going to do here is have their right guard and right tackle each block those two interior linemen right over there, and they're also going to have their center block that nose tackle, so basically the nose tackle is getting double teamed, and that's key because that means that the right guard is then going to move up to block Kuechly after the double team. So from there, they're actually going to pull their left guard over to the left side of the screen to block the edge rusher right over there, and they're going to pull their tight end all the way over to lead block for Coleman. So that's the way this play is designed to work. Basically, everyone is supposed to just make their blocks, and then Tevin Coleman can run out the middle, and in theory, if this play works out perfectly, he could have a lead blocker in front of him and a lot of room to run. And not only that, but the right tackle has a good angle to block that interior lineman, and the other interior lineman is getting double teamed, so this now means that there should be plenty of holes for Coleman to try to run through. However, one thing you're going to notice right after this play develops is that it's very hard to block Kuechly when coming off a double team. There's a reason why Kuechly is going to be a surefire Hall of Famer, and it's because he's very good at finding ways to get around blocks, and that's exactly what he was able to do here. So now it's like, okay, well that didn't work out perfectly, however you had a lead blocker for this exact reason, to make sure that you can block someone if someone else doesn't make their block. You could have just double teamed an extra guy, however they wanted to make sure that if someone misses their block, then they can make sure they make that block. That's the whole idea behind having a lead blocker in this situation. So if he goes over and blocks Kuechly, this now means that Coleman should run to the left side of the screen, however he's going to have to run pretty far to get over there. But I want you to take a look at Coleman here and look at how quickly he's able to break to the left side of the screen. I mean, he does it so seamlessly, and granted, Kuechly gets around that block as well, so he's still able to make a tackle. However, that was a great play by Coleman. Had Atlanta made their blocks well, this is easily going for a first down and potentially 15 to 20 yards. One player can only do so much even if you are the player with the ball, however he definitely did his part and was able to pick up a positive gain and was almost able to pick up a huge gain if the blockers just gave him a little bit better help on that one. His east to west movement really is a thing of beauty, and let's show this one as an example of it actually working out pretty well as opposed to it just being a good play despite it not working out. Right here, what Atlanta's going to do is have their left guard and center each block the interior lineman, and then the left guard will move up to block Kuechly. And what they're also going to do is have their left tackle block the edge rusher right there. And it's going to be a designed run through that gap, and once again, they do have a lead blocker, this time being a fullback, going to be running in that direction. However, once again, the initial play isn't going to work out the way it was designed to, not because of someone missing their block. Instead, it's going to be Carolina doing a very good job of filling each hole that Coleman could try to run through. As you see right there, a linebacker is moving in that's going to take away that lead blocker, so now Coleman is basically without a lead block on that right side of the screen. Also, Kuechly once again is going to do a very good job of moving over to the right side of the screen and staying in the way of where Coleman could try to run through. Even though he is getting blocked, he can essentially two-gap here, and there's no space in between him in any direction. If Coleman tried to run to either side of Kuechly, he could easily reach his hand out and make a tackle. Although there is one slight thing of good news for Atlanta, and it's going to be the edge rusher on the left side of the screen. As you notice, he's pretty far to the right side of the screen than an edge rusher typically would be, and for good reason, as it is supposed to be a run to the right side of the screen. That's the way he sees everyone blocking, so he's going to try to move over in that direction to try to help make a tackle. He knows he has a defensive back behind him, so he doesn't have to worry too much about giving up containment. However, Coleman's going to try it in that direction and take a look at what happens. He gets over to the outside. It's not going to be a tackle for a loss or anything, but this really isn't a whole lot better now, is it? As you see on the screen, he's moving over to the left side. However, there's just really not a lot of room for him to run here. I mean, sure, he can try to outrun that defensive back, but outrunning a defensive back is very hard to do. Perhaps he will gain a couple of yards, however, there's a very small chance he's going to gain much more than that. And if you look at the way his body is tilted, I mean, he's definitely running to the left side. There's no way he's going to be able to break down or anything like that. Except, that's exactly what he's going to do. I mean, he's just so quick at cutting, he's able to easily get by that defensive back. And also worth mentioning, look at how much room he was able to run after getting around that defensive back. I mean, even though he's going up against a defensive back, he's still able to pick up a ton of yards on that play. It's his speed and quickness that really makes him such a talented player. That's what's going to allow him to be very effective in this San Francisco 49ers offense. His great ability to move east and west doesn't just start in plays like that, it can also be effective in a play like this, where basically the way this is going to work for Atlanta is that they're going to have their right guard and right tackle double team that Bengal right over there, and they also have two tight ends on the play who are going to double team the Cincinnati edge rusher. From there, they'll also have two Falcons get off that initial double team and both move over to block those two Bengals linebackers right over there. Of course, Cincinnati actually has 4 linebackers in this game here, but to counteract that, they're going to have a fullback basically block to the right side of the screen, which is going to force that linebacker to believe that it's going to be running that direction. You would kind of have to move over to that side of the screen if you're a linebacker if a fullback is blocking in that direction, because if it is a run in that direction and you don't move over instantly, it could be a run for a ton of yards. So from there, all Atlanta would have to do was simply to send Coleman over to the left and he could get very far. However, of course, there is a problem with this play, and the problem is going to be that it's hard to get a lot of space in a situation like this. There's a lot of guys in that area, and sometimes you just can't have the space to cleanly get through somebody. While yes, everyone is getting accounted for, there's a difference between having every single defensive player accounted for and having every single player blocked in a way that you can run through. Like the Cincinnati Bengal that you see circled right now is essentially two gapping here, where regardless of the gap that Coleman tries to run through, he can move over and try to make a tackle on either one of those sides. So basically the thought process is that Coleman wouldn't be able to get through here. However, Coleman has other ideas. Basically what he's going to do is fake as though he's running to the left, and then simply cut back to the right. This allows him to get through that gap and pick up a solid gain on this play when there really wasn't a lot of space to begin with. That's a hard play to make, and it's a very aware play to make because he realized how much time he had. If there was someone coming through on the right side of the screen, he wouldn't have the time to make something like this, and he would have to just run straight through and try to pick up 2 or 3 yards. But he knew he had the time, and so he cut back over to the left so much and then cut to the right to make sure he could get through. It's a great showing of patience, of just waiting it out and letting something develop, however even more so because he didn't just let something develop, but he also forced something to develop in a certain way. Once he did that, he was able to take advantage of it, and that's what led to a solid gain. And just to be clear though, I keep talking about his east and west, that doesn't mean that he's not the best north and south runner either. While granted he's not exactly Ezekiel Elliott in that department, that doesn't mean that he can't go up the middle as well. Like on this one, it's a pretty basic blocking concept. Almost everyone has a one-on-one block, with the exception being the center and right guard. However, once that right guard does finish the double team, he will move over to block that linebacker, so basically everyone has a one-on-one block, and then they're simply just going to send Coleman straight up the middle. And so as you see, once this play develops, there is a solid gap, so he should just run through that direction. But I just want to be clear here, yes there is a gap, but you can also look over to other directions and there's some more gaps over to the left or to the right as well. There's a gap for a second, however there's no way this gap is going to be staying the whole way. A Bengals player is going to move over and make a tackle, however Coleman is okay with that. Not every play has to go for 20 yards, not every play has to go for a touchdown. Sometimes you have to pick up 4 or 5 yards, that's very important in the NFL. He just runs straight through the middle, gets tackled, but picks up 5 yards, and that's a great play. I mean sure, he is great at running east and west, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's what he has to do. Just because he can break to the outside doesn't mean he feels like he has to every play. He picks his moments, and that's very important. One way he can definitely be effective is in the passing game. He had a career high in receiving yards in 2016 with 421, and while he hasn't quite reached that height, he still picked up a very respectable 299 receiving yards in 2017 and 276 receiving yards in 2018. Not to mention he's picked up at least 3 receiving touchdowns each of the last 3 seasons, including 5 receiving touchdowns last season. These aren't stats that are simply going to wow you, and most of his stats won't, considering the fact that he's been playing behind Devonta Freeman for most of his career. But I do think that they go to show how he can be a factor in the passing game. And one simple way of that is just screen passes. Like a play like this, basically he's lined up as a receiver right now, and he's going to take a couple steps back and take the pass right over there. There's actually 4 Atlanta Falcons who are all in the top half of the screen right now, 3 of which are going to go out to block Redskins right over there. There's also another Redskin in the area, however the offensive line is going to run over to try to block them, and it's actually going to be the left guard who's going to try to get up and make that block. Definitely a long way to go, but he will have a head start because the screen pass does take a bit of time to develop. And speaking of the screen pass developing, it's definitely going to be a very tough play right now. Washington's defensive line does a pretty solid job on this one. While I sell out somewhat, they're not completely over to the bottom half of the screen, meaning that Coleman can't really run as far to the bottom half of the screen as he would have liked. Typically, you want to help out your quarterback in this situation by running as far to the bottom of the screen as possible. However, first things first, you have to make sure you can make the catch. And if he was really anything more than maybe another yard closer to the bottom half of the screen, it could have easily just been intercepted for all he knows. So this now means that he's farther up to the top half of the screen. And you might be thinking, okay, well, why does that matter? And the reason for that is because you're actually going to have to take a couple steps to the bottom half of the screen to make sure he gets around that first block, and then move back to the top half of the screen to make sure he gets around those other blocks. He's going to have to change his direction, and given how close those Redskins defenders are, they definitely could run over and try to get into the play. So here's what I want you to take a look at here. Take a look at his ability to get to his top speed and keep running while changing direction. I mean, this is just fantastic, and this is what you love to see out of a halfback if you want to run screen passes with him. I mean, sometimes things aren't going to work out perfectly, so the fact that he's able to change that direction and keep that top speed and go all the way into the end zone for a touchdown really just shows how talented he is. That can come up huge, and that can make him a very valuable asset. And given the low price tag, I mean, really for Coleman, worst case scenario is he's just a third down back, so it's easily a great decision for the 49ers. Speed is really what's going to set him apart, as he can be a matchup nightmare against linebackers. This play will be a great example. This is going to be man coverage. average, meaning the person who's in charge of covering Coleman right now is going to be linebacker Mason Foster, who I wouldn't necessarily consider a scrub. However, he's definitely far from the guy you want covering Tevin Coleman. He does have 3 100-plus tackle seasons in his 8-year career, and Pro Football Focus gave him a grade of 58.4, which is a little bit above average. So that's kind of why I'm showing this play. Let's not see how he matched up against a great player. Let's see how he matched up against an average player, which will really show his greatness. I mean, a linebacker going up against a running back is already a bit of a mismatch, but when you have a fast guy like Coleman, it becomes a major mismatch. It's going to be a flat route to the top half of the screen, and it's basically just a foot race. See who can get to the top half of the screen quicker, and I mean, this is just unfair. This is like an older brother running against a younger brother. I mean, Coleman just wins this matchup so easily. Foster really doesn't even have a chance. Coleman can hold his own against the best, but he can absolutely eat the mediocre alive, and that's really kind of why he's a very valuable asset. I mean, there is one thing that you do have to mention when you're talking about him, and it's the fact that clearly last season he showed that he is not an every down back. But I don't really think they're going to use Coleman in that way. I mean, look at what's made the New England Patriots so good for so long. It isn't that they have a ton of players who can do everything. That's not it at all. They have a lot of players who can do one thing very well. Of course, you would like an every down back, and the reason why he's not is probably why he didn't get a huge contract. However, he can do enough things well to make him very valuable. And one of the things he does pretty well is field vision. Like on this play, the right tackle is going to be blocking that Green Bay edge rusher on the left side of the screen. And then Atlanta's going to have their center and right guard double team that interior lineman right over there. So now if that's the hole to run through, well then what should that Green Bay Packer in the middle of the screen do? He should run over to clog up that hole. Makes perfect sense, right? However, of course, Atlanta isn't just being stupid and they have a plan for that. What they're going to do is have that right guard move over after finishing off the double team and go over to block him. But one way they're going to make sure to help this block out is they're basically faking as though this is going to be a run to the left side of the screen to make sure that Packer runs over to the left side of the screen as much as possible. Because the gap isn't actually going to be the B gap, it's going to be the A gap on this one. It's going to be in between the center and the guard. And that's important because the A gap kind of didn't even exist at the beginning of this play because the guard and center were both double teaming someone. So if you're a Packer, you definitely expect it to be through the B gap, and one of the reasons why you do expect it and why you are running through that direction is because Coleman's doing a very good job of selling that's going to be running that direction. I mean, he takes the handoff and he's facing basically just straight down to the bottom half of the screen. But now once the guard moves over to the right, he's easily able to cut back over to the right side of the screen and pick up a solid gain. Sometimes it's just those subtle little moves that can be the difference between a gain of 1 and a gain of 10. Also, one thing you might have noticed from that last play is who they were playing. You're saying it was the Green Bay Packers, so what? But really what I should be saying is not who they were playing, but when they were playing, and that was in 2016 in the NFC Championship game. The reason I bring this up is because, of course, the offensive coordinator that time when Tevin Coleman had his career year was Kyle Shanahan. I have a feeling that's part of the reason why Shanahan went out and got him is because he trusts that Coleman can fit well in his system. One thing that made Coleman so effective in his system was something like this. There is a fullback in the game, because of course there is, we know how Kyle Shanahan loves fullbacks, but basically what it's going to be a pretty standard run just straight at the middle. That's the way this play is designed. However, Green Bay is going to make sure they do not get beat by the run here. One thing they're doing is they have 3 players who are already right in the box who are going to make sure they can try to get into the play and stop the run, and they also have another Packer who's going to run in and try to stop the run as well. This basically forces every Atlanta player to have a one-on-one block at this point. You can't really double team too many guys. And so with that, Atlanta's right tackle is going to have a one-on-one block of an edge rusher, and he's not going to win his matchup. As you see, that edge rusher is able to get around the tackle and move over to make a tackle on Coleman. So now you're thinking, wait, this is the bad thing. This just goes to show that there's an easy way to beat Coleman. All you have to do is basically just send a house and you'll make sure that you get him every time. I mean, Coleman isn't exactly a power back. He's more of a speed back and more of a guy who can get around people. So if you send a lot of players, you can easily make sure you get a tackle. But my point is, look at how many players are right there in the middle of the screen. There's only 3 Green Bay Packers who are not in the middle of that play trying to stop the run on this one. And the reason why that matters is because of this next play. They're going to start off with fullback blocking, and then they're going to send Coleman just straight up the middle. Very similar to that last play. However, this time it's going to be a play action. The fullback's going to run to the flat on the top half of the screen, and the halfback's going to run a quick curl right there in the middle of the screen. So one thing you'll notice here is Ryan does a very good job of faking that handoff. You always want to make sure when you're a quarterback to make sure that your fake handoff looks about the exact same as a real handoff, and Ryan did a very good job on that one. So now, because Green Bay is so focused on stopping Tevin Coleman and stopping the run, this now means that the fullback is actually going to get completely free to the top half of the screen. This play goes for a ton of yards, and it's a play where Coleman never even touched the ball. However, he had a huge impact on it. Just being on the field was a huge reason they were able to get 2 to 5 yard line on this play. I mean, so much of that 2016 Atlanta Falcons team just ran so well. However, Coleman was part of that 2016 Atlanta Falcons team. He did his part. He can definitely fit in the Kyle Shanahan offense, and it'll be very interesting to see next season when he tries to fit in there once again. Part of the problem when a team makes so many free agent acquisitions is you don't really know how well they're going to turn out. I mean, sure, they're good players, but football is such a scheme sport, you don't really know how well they're going to fit. But when you have a guy like Coleman, who's already clearly a talented player, and it's already proven he can fit in the Kyle Shanahan offense, it's pretty much a no-risk situation. And with the 49ers already having a lot of talent at that position, adding Coleman really just makes a ton of sense. It's a no-risk situation, it doesn't cost a lot, and has a huge upside.